Sarai here. Welcome back to my channel. So today I have for you my June wrap up. So I want to preface this by saying it's been a long time since I've been on here. I've been really busy, so I'm sorry for that. But um, yeah, so let's get into this. I do want to talk about the books I read in May because I did read quite a few. What I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to do like a recent reads video or something like that. But for now, let's just talk about the books I read in the month of June. So in the month of June, I think I read about 16 books. I think it is altogether. So I read quite a few. Most of them at the end of the month. I'll get into that later. Okay, so the first book I read in the month of June was Hades and Persephone by Melody Rose. Now this book is obviously a Hades and Persephone retelling. It is a very modern version. So Persephone has lived her whole life. She's been very sheltered by her mother Demeter, and in this retelling she ends up running into Hades while she's at a club owned by Eros. They end up meeting, they hit it off, and their relationship kind of blooms from there. I gave this book 3 stars. Now, it wasn't a bad book, and 3 stars is not a bad rating, so I don't want to make it sound like it is. I just found, like, whenever there was a problem in this book, the solution was really convenient. Like she was locked in the room by her mother. And then Hades goes, oh, well, I'm so powerful, I can just override her mother's lock and her mom will never know. Or, like, oh, I was never able to defeat my brothers before, but I'm sure I can now because I'm so angry. So it was like a lot of conveniences that happened in this story. And it wasn't that it wasn't good or entertaining. I found this very entertaining, but I also found that it dragged for me because although the story moves and it's not that long, it just felt like I was rolling my eyes at a lot of things. Sorry if you can hear the guy cutting the grass outside. It's very loud. But anyway, so it just felt like there were a lot of conveniences that shouldn't have been there. But I did enjoy the story. It wasn't that it was bad. It did move quickly. It just felt very convenient. So the next book I read was for the Mafia romance readathon. So the first book I read for that one was Dirty Dom, and I do have a vlog for that. I did film one. I don't know if I even want to post it now because it's so late, but I'll think about it and see. But anyway, and I read Dirty Dom by Will Winters, and Dirty Dom is about obviously a man named Dom and a woman named Becca who is a successful restaurant owner, and her husband has just died. He ends up racking up this debt with the mafia, and Dom is the loan shark that she has to go and pay, and unbeknownst to him, she comes to kind of pay off her husband's debt, but she's a little bit short, and he ends up becoming, like, obsessed with her, enamored with her, and to pay off the debt, they end up sleeping together because he feels so guilty for sleeping with her. He comes to see her, their relationship grows, and it's very good. I think I gave this one 3 stars as well. It wasn't a bad book at all. I just felt like I wish it was longer, and I didn't necessarily love the heroine. I loved Dom, and he was in love with her, and he really liked her, and he was willing to do anything for her. I just didn't love her because I felt like one of the main plot points in this is that she has a son with her husband, or with her ex-husband, and I felt like who Dom was when she met him, when she decided to get involved with him, when she decided to sleep with him, whatever. She knew who he was, and I felt like throughout the story she just really wanted him to be someone else, to change who he was, even though she knew who he was when they started. And I didn't really like that. Even though he was willing to change for her, I just didn't enjoy that aspect of the story. It wasn't that the story was bad, I just didn't like that part because she knew what she was getting into when she decided to start with him. And then I felt like she kind of flipped it and decided all of a sudden that he wasn't a great guy to be with. So it's just my own hang up. It wasn't that it was a bad story, it was just that I really did not like that part of it. The next book I read was Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark, and this book was so good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. And I want to keep reading on in the series. And this one is about a guy named Callum and a girl named Ada. And Ada is part of the Italian mafia, which is very old school, and Callum is a part of the Irish mob. They don't like to be involved with the Italians because they feel like they're too old school. And so Ada and her siblings, because I think she has 3 or 4 brothers, decide they're going to crash Callum's family's party. Ada ends up sneaking into Callum's family home, and while she's in there, she ends up setting the house on fire, and she runs away. Callum and Ada's fathers end up getting involved, and they decide in order to create peace within these 2 families, they're going to marry their 2 children to each other. And now, this is a very serious hate to lovers romance. They do not like each other. They end up doing awful things to each other to kind of get back at one another, like who's gonna up the next one. So it's like, yeah, it's very true hate to lovers, but I enjoyed it, and I found myself laughing at a lot of the things they do, even though the stuff that they do is awful, and you know it's awful. It made me laugh so hard, and I really enjoyed this. And like I said, I definitely want to read the next one, so when I have time. So the next book I read was Ruthless People by J.J. McCoy, and this book ended up being one of my favorite, if not the favorite book of the month. This book is about Liam and Melody, and she is the daughter of the head of the Italian mob or mafia, and he's the son of the head of the Irish mob. There you go. And they have been set to get married by their 2 fathers. Their father set it up, and then Liam thinks he's gonna get like this docile, weak, submissive wife, and Melody is nothing like that. She is nothing like that. She is the complete opposite. She is just as calculating as he is, if not more so. She's definitely brutal. She has no moral hang-ups at all. And I loved it so much because I think that's why I loved it. Melody is definitely a character that I fell in love with very much. You read a lot of mafia books, and the heroine is very meek and mild and submissive to her husband, and I get it because it's very traditional, but at the same time, it's nice to read a book where your heroine is just as strong, just as badass as your hero, and she has no qualms about it. She doesn't feel guilty about it. I loved it so much. Like I said, it was maybe my favorite book of the month, but I have one other one that's kind of up there, and obviously this was a 5-star. I can't wait to keep reading in the series. I just want to listen to them on audio because that's how I read the first one, but I have to find time for it. But I already have it, so don't be surprised if you see it in my July wrap-up. So the next book I read was When Heroes Fall by Gianna Darling, and this one is about Elena Lombardi and Dante Salvatore, I think his last name is. And Dante is the head of the New York Mafia, and Elena is a lawyer who is set to defend him in a court because he has been accused of murder. Now, she's only doing this because her sister asked her to, and her sister is Dante's best friend, so she kind of gets roped into this against her will, and Dante kind of wears her down, and that's what I really loved about this one. Now, I gave this one 4 stars, and I thought I was going to give it 5 stars because I love Gianna Darling. I read most of her books. I've read most of her books, I should say, rather, and I thought this one was going to be a 5-star, and don't get me wrong, it was very, very good. I Loved it. It was very easy to read. I liked the chemistry between Elena and Dante. What I think is going to end up happening is I think the first one is a 4-star, and I think the second one, When Villains Rise, is going to be a 5-star. I'm hoping that's the case. We will see, hopefully this week or next week when I read it, if that's the case. But I'm hoping so. So we'll see. But that's what I'm expecting, because I just feel like there was a lot of things happening, but it wasn't a lot of action, and that's what I wanted. So I'm hoping that's what happens in the next one, but we'll see. So the next two books I read were part of a duet, and it was part of the Bound, I think it was called Bound Together duet. The first book was Torn Apart, and the second book was Bound Together by Nikki Ash and Kay Webster. So this book, or these books rather, were so complicated, and I loved it. I loved all the drama, all the angst. These are about Ash, Mia, Drew, and Gray. And when I started these two books, and I read the synopsis, I so thought this was going to be about Ash and all, like, his trials, all the stuff that happens to him. And don't get me wrong, it is about that, but it's only part of the story. Now, as I started reading it, I realized this was going to end up in a polyamorous, like, foursome relationship, and I was loving it. So, this is set at a college. I can't even remember the college's name. And so, like I said, you have Ash, who is the son of the dean, and he's used to living a very privileged life, but he lives on pushing his dad's buttons to gain his attention. Then you have Mia, who is the daughter of a starlet and a very famous cardiologist, and or a cardiothoracic surgeon, let me say that. And she is not what she seems. She does a lot of things to please her mom, who is very abusive to her, mentally, not physically. But she's used to being, like, stepped over because her dad always chooses her mom. He always takes her mom's side in things. And so she puts on this persona of being, like, this very girly, like, sorority type girl, but she's really not like that. And she's really, like, a nerd, and she likes to be at home with Ash playing video games. That's what she'd rather do. Then you have Gray, who kind of ended up being, like, one of the most traumatized people in this group, because Gray has suffered a lot of loss in his life. He lost a family member. He ended up losing his best friend, Drew. And he's just kind of going through the motions because he wants to be a famous hockey player. So he's just kind of taking life as it comes to him. He's not creating any connections and friends. He's, like, one-track mind, and he knows what he wants, and that's it. He's not letting anything else get in his way. Then, like I said, you have Drew. And Drew used to be Gray's best friend up until he just left. And you don't really know why he left until you get in the story, and it's kind of spoilers, so we're not going to get into that. But he has left. He went to go pro as a pro hockey player, and then he just quit. Nobody knows why, and he came back home. And now he's the new coach for this hockey team at this college. And so their relationship kind of all converges when Gray tries to buy a test, or an answer key for a test from Ash, and Mia ends up seeing it, and then Drew, as a new coach, ends up forcing Mia to be Gray's new tutor, and then Ash and Drew end up roommates at this college because the college doesn't have any more rooms for the faculty. It's so interesting how I guess not interesting, it's coincidental how their relationship ends up overlapping, and it's not like it's unreasonable, it's realistic, but it just ends up one thing on top of the other thing, and their relationships all end up intertangled, and they kind of don't understand, why do I have feelings for you? and then I have feelings for you, and then I have feelings for you too, and it's just them figuring out the dynamics of their relationships and who they want to be as well as who they want to be with. And I really enjoyed this. I loved it so much. I think I gave both of them 5 stars, but if not, I gave the first one 4 stars and the second one 5 stars. But like I said, I really loved these. It was so good. It was so good. So the next book I read was Neon Gods by Katie Roberts. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. So this one takes place in Olympus. That's the name of the city. And you have these major players in the city. Now, the major players are obviously the 13 main gods, like the inner circle gods. And in this society, in order to become a god, you either have to be born into it, so like a father passes it on to his son, or you have to be elected into the position. So you have Demeter, and because she is a deity of the people, she is elected into her position. Whereas you have Zeus, who passes his name down from father to son. So, um, like I said, this is a Hades and Persephone retelling where Persephone ends up going to this party with her mother Demeter, and at this party, Demeter and Zeus end up announcing that Persephone is engaged to Zeus, where she didn't even know she was engaged, nor does she want to be engaged to Zeus, because every woman who has become Zeus's Hera has ended up dead. And I think she'll be number 6, I think, in the line of Heras. And Persephone is very upset by this. She refuses and she goes on the run. And she ends up running to Hades. Now, Hades has always had a grudge against Zeus because Zeus killed his parents, and he is all too willing to take Persephone under his wing and kind of fake that they have a relationship to create more ire in Zeus, and so that he will no longer want Persephone, and Hades can do what he's always wanted and enact revenge against Zeus. So, like I said, I did enjoy this. I loved how sweet Hades was. I loved how he just kind of melted for Persephone. I loved that. I just wanted more from this story, I think, which is why I didn't end up being a 5 star. And I don't know where it could have been more, but I did want more. And I don't know why. Or maybe I was expecting more. So it let me down a little bit, but it wasn't because it was a bad story. It was really good. It was really quick to read. I think I read it in a day. So, like I said, it was very easy. And usually Katie Roberts' books are easy for me to read, so I don't really struggle with that. It just, I wanted more from it than what I got. So, alright, so the next 2 books I read were What He Doesn't Know and What He Never Knew. No, What He Always Knew by Candy Steiner. Woo, I can't say that. And these are about Charlie and Cam and Reese. So, Charlie and Cam are married. So, Charlie and Cam have been married for about 7 years, I think, and they ended up suffering a major loss, and it put their marriage in jeopardy because they no longer communicate, they don't really take the time to be around each other anymore, and they've just kind of become complacent in their marriage. And Charlie has kind of fallen into this depressive state, and Cam just kind of goes through the stages. He doesn't really put in a lot of effort. He's always at work. He doesn't really put in any effort to their marriage. So Charlie just kind of assumes that he hates her, he doesn't like her anymore, he doesn't really want to be with her anymore. And so that's where they're at. And then in comes Reese as the new music teacher at Charlie's school, because she's a teacher, and he used to be her next door neighbor and her childhood crush until his family moved away, and he's come back after the death of his family, and he's trying to find home again and where home is for him, and just kind of reestablish himself again. So him and Charlie end up re-striking up their friendship, and he starts noticing that she is very sad. She's very different from the woman that he used to know, and so they kind of begin. Well, they don't kind of begin. They begin like this affair, and I I gave both of these 4 stars, and I really, once again, I feel like I'm saying the same thing about all of the books. Either I really love them or I just didn't like the heroine. But in these 2 books, I really did not like Charlie. I felt like she didn't really put in a lot of effort to fix her marriage, and she was very quick to go from, oh, I'm married, I love my husband, I wish he would pay more attention to me, to, oh, I'm married, but I like this guy and I want to be with him instead. And I feel like there was like no time really in between that. Like, I don't even think that this story takes place. I think it takes place over like a 2-month time period, if I'm being correct. I believe it was 2 months. So it's just, it feels like she was very quick to like give up on her 7-year marriage and decide to have an affair. And also, like, Cam was probably my favorite character out of the 3 main characters. I felt like he was willing to work on himself, and he was willing to change, to be different. And Charlie didn't change anything. Like, she changed nothing. She didn't even try to attempt to change. She just felt like he was the one with the problem. He needed to change. He needed to pay more attention to her. Like, it was just, I felt like it was a lot of him blaming and not her blaming, if that makes sense. And I felt like he changed a lot for her, but she didn't really change at all for him. I don't think she changed anything at all for him. So it just, I didn't really care for that part of the story, and I think I kept going and kept reading on to the second one because I thought, okay, well, they'll do like counseling or something, and he did, but she didn't. Like, she didn't even try to like work on herself. Her working on herself was having an affair, and I just didn't find that fair, and I didn't think it was right, and I didn't really care for her perspective because I felt like when you got her perspective, it was very much like finger pointing and like, he did this and he didn't do this, and she never once looked at herself and said, well, I didn't do this and I didn't do this and where did I fall short. And I just didn't like that in the story. So I mean, it wasn't the worst, and like I said, Cam probably carried me through the whole story, but I just didn't really care for her too much. So the story itself wasn't bad. Like I said, I gave them both 4 stars, I'm pretty sure, but it just, something about her just rubbed me the wrong way. So the next book I read was Tempting Hades by Emma Hamm, and this one I gave 3 stars. So this book, I liked this book except for the fact that in this story, Persephone and Hades end up meeting at a party that Zeus has thrown in Olympus, and he ends up originally thinking she was a nymph, but he finds out that she's a goddess, and immediately he like head over heels for her. He really likes her. She's so different from anybody he's ever met, and he wants to constantly be around her and know her more. So they kind of start this secret relationship, and he ends up taking her down to the underworld to become his wife. And in this story, I didn't end up liking this story because I felt like there were a lot of things that the characters could have done differently and it would have worked out better. And I also didn't like how Nave Persephone was. Like, I get that there are a lot of things she didn't know. She was very sheltered. I got that. But at the same time, like, she agrees to marry Hades, and then he comes to take her down to the underworld, and, like, she gets scared and she runs away from him. And it's like, but you said you wanted to go. In your mind, you just said you wanted to go. We just literally read your perspective, and you said you wanted to go, and now you're running away and you don't want to go, but you just said you did. And that it was just a lot of things like that that I didn't like. And it wasn't the story was bad. It wasn't anything like that. And also keep in mind too, in this story, you don't get any like sexual relations until I think at least halfway through the book, if not longer. I don't really remember because it was a little bit ago. But that's the other thing. So I started this book at I want to say the beginning of the month or at the end of last month. And I didn't finish this book until the end of June. So it was just boring to me. Like, there wasn't a lot to it. And I didn't really care to read about Persephone and her story. Like, I liked Hades and I liked a lot of what he contributed to the story, but where she was concerned, it was just very boring to me, and I didn't like that. So I don't know. I just didn't like it. I just didn't like it. I can't go anywhere else than that. So the last books I read in the month of June were all from the Morelli family series by Sam Mariano. So you have Accidental Witness. Okay, so you have Accidental Witness, Surviving Mateo, Once Burned, Family Ties, and Resisting Mateo. I think those are the last 5. I'm currently reading another one, so I'm trying to make sure I don't include the title of that one in there. I think that's what it is. So I can't tell you about any of the other books except for the first one, because they kind of all go together and you have to read them in order. What I will say is there is an underlying plot through the whole story that you won't get until later on in the series, um, but yeah, that's part of why I can't tell you, because there is such an underlying plot and all the books tie together. So there is that. But I will tell you, the first book is about a girl named Mia who ends up stumbling upon somebody setting her neighbor's house on fire. When she realizes she recognizes one of the guys who has done this, she tries to call the police, but he ends up seeing her hiding in the bushes, and she runs back into her house. And when she goes back to school, he basically threatens her to never tell anyone, and he keeps an eye on her, and they end up stumbling kind of into this relationship. So when this happens, Mia is very unsure because everyone in this city knows that the Morelli family, which by the way, this guy's name is Vince Morelli. So everybody knows in the city that the Morelli family is part of the mob, or I'm saying the mob, part of the mafia, and that nobody should mess with them because they're not good people. Um, but she quickly becomes ingrained in this family and their drama and their arguments and fights and struggles, and she ends up becoming very much over her head very early on. It's not planned, but it just kind of happens where she stumbles into this. And all I have to say is that Matteo Morelli is one of my favorite characters ever. And he is one of the worst characters I have ever read, ever. And he is also one of my favorite. I have fallen in love with this series. Like I said, in the last week, I have marathoned, not even a week, I don't think. No, because I started the first one on Friday. Today is Thursday. And I finished the 5th book yesterday. So like I said, almost a week, and I've marathoned through most of these books, and I am loving them. I'm loving them so hard right now. Matteo Morelli is awful. He is awful. He is completely awful. He will make you hate him and love him in the same book, and I just love it. I love how his mind works. I just love all of it. I love all of it. And not that I would want a Mateo in my real life, but I just love him so much. So, um, I think I gave the first one 5 stars. I think they've all been pretty much 5 stars, except for the third book. I think I gave 4 stars, and the fourth book I gave 4 stars. So books 1 and 2, I gave both of those 5 stars. Books 3, 4, and 5, I all gave 4 stars. And I think that's just because they don't necessarily revolve around Mateo. But anyway, well, book 5 does, but that's, like I said, can't get into it. But I can't. I love this so much. And I'm so sad that I can't like rant and explain it to you. I'll probably do like a vlog kill it and just like rant about this. But I loved it so much. I'm loving this series so much. I want to finish it by the beginning of next week. That's my hope. We'll see if I have time. But, like I said, this has quickly become some of my favorite books ever, ever, ever. But that is it. That is everything I read in the month of June. I am sorry that I didn't talk to you about May. Like I said, I'm going to try and do a video on all the books I read in May, but I don't know when that one will go up, so we'll see. But until next time, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you want it, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.